Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of This Week at Neighbors Together. This is our weekly series that we've been doing to interview our staff at Neighbors Together to get to know them a bit more, to help you understand what we've been doing during the COVID-19 crisis here at Neighbors Together and in Brooklyn. And if you haven't watched our past episodes, head to YouTube. You can find us on YouTube at Neighbors Together. And you can also check us out on Instagram at Neighbors Together, Facebook, and on Twitter. We'd love to have you guys following us and following up what we're doing at this time. So this week, I am super excited to be joined by Miriam Chesterman, our member advocate. Miriam, thank you for being here with us this week. I'm so excited to talk to you more about your role and also talk about what you've been doing during this time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So my role at Neighbors Together previous to COVID-19 was pretty face-fronting. I was kind of the miscellaneous person in the office.
I wouldn't say it like that necessarily, but you're our member advocate. So you are, I would say, a jack of all trades at Neighbors Together. So before we dive into that, you are a member of the AVODAH Service Corps.
Yes.
Can you explain quickly what AVODAH is, just for people who might not know?
Yeah, definitely. AVODAH is a year-long service year directed at bringing young Jewish leaders from basically ages 21 to 26 to four of the largest cities in the United States that have the sorry, I was just checking my internet, just make sure it's working.
No problem, you're all good.
That have really high levels of poverty, and the goal is to bring these people to work in these different communities in either New York, DC, Chicago, or New Orleans. And mainly we're just doing anti-poverty, anti-racism work. And it can show up in a bunch of different ways through community organizing or direct service work. And my role at Neighbors Together is more on the direct service work side.
Great. How did you find AVODAH, and how did you find Neighbors Together through AVODAH?
So I found AVODAH through my older brother. I was looking for another job when I was in my last semester of college, and I just wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And he suggested looking into this sort of experimental 1-year-long option that wasn't a permanent job. It would give me the opportunity to both learn alongside like-minded people, live communally with other Jews of my own age, and also get an opportunity to just work in a real organization that I might not otherwise have worked at if I were to just go there independently. And it sort of seemed like the perfect fit for me. So through AVODAH, when I was doing the interview process, I came across Neighbors Together, and it really drew me in. It's a really, really fascinating and unique organization. I've never really seen an organization that does both emergency food relief as well as social services, as well as community organizing. So I was really drawn in by it.
That's awesome. And so how long is your program at AVODAH? I think you mentioned it's a year, correct?
Yes.
So when did you start and when do you finish?
I started, I moved to New York end of August. My job at Neighbors Together started in early September, and I think my last week is sometime in the end of July, and the program ends in mid-August.
Yeah, so Neighbors Together has been working with AVODAH member advocates and interns for quite some time, I think for over 10 years for sure, because I know our executive director is a former AVODAH Service Corps member, and so is our director of organizing and policy, Amy Bloomsack. So I want to talk to you about what you do at Neighbors Together and what your role looked like before COVID-19. Obviously, the organization has had so many changes that we've talked about in previous episodes about our community cafe, our empowerment program, and our community action program. And like you said, as a member advocate, you're really like a jack of all trades and you do a lot at Neighbors Together. So what does the member advocate role look like, and what were you doing before COVID-19?
Yeah, so the member advocate role looks like, as you said, a jack of all trades. On a typical day, I would have walk-in hours for about 4 hours a day that would fall over the lunch hour, so that when the majority of our members were coming in to get lunch, they could kind of pair that with also coming in to receive services. I would help people with a bunch of different things, helping edit their resumes, apply for jobs online, file their taxes, which was something that I was doing before COVID hit. In addition to helping them get their benefits sorted out, referring them out to different legal aid societies. But the bulk of my work was focused on housing. I worked a lot with people who were housing voucher holders, helping them just navigate the process of looking for housing in such an insane New York market, as well as dealing with source of income discrimination. So I would say the bulk of my time was spent doing that.
Yeah. And the bulk of your time was spent on site, like meeting
Yes.
with members and talking to members and being that advocate for them.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things that you have learned, before COVID, like when you were working with members, what were some of the things that you were learning that were very striking to you? I know you mentioned housing. Were there things that popped up that have become like very prevalent in your role?
Yeah. What I learned the most about is how much of a trap being in the shelter system is, and how being low income and living in a shelter is not so simple as just you get a voucher and you're out.
Right.
It takes months, if not years, to exit the shelter system, and the city of New York makes it incredibly difficult to do so. In addition to that, I learned a lot about how public benefits work, such as public assistance, SSI, SSDI, all of these different government aid, and how sort of bureaucratic it is, and how the application process is really challenging, and sort of like you have to be strategic about it. And so I learned a lot about that. In addition to that, I learned how to best utilize our community partners through mobilization for justice, their legal aid opportunities. In addition to other AVODAH core members in my cohort work at New York Legal Assistance Group, so I really leaned on them for support. Sanctuary for Families, I think that was a really big part, is just helping our members connect with these aid programs that can really benefit them.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And what have you learned about our members, the people who come to Neighbors Together?
Our members are amazing. They're resilient, they're funny, they're kind, and really strong. I mean, I know that I come from such a place of privilege, and this is the first time that I've really gotten the opportunity to talk to people that have led very different lives than myself. And I can just say that I don't think I've ever met a more, like, I guess I already used this word again, but resilient group of people.
Yeah.
Like just watching them go to our information sessions on source of income discrimination, and getting involved with our community organizing, and really just advocating for themselves. Sometimes I feel like they don't even need me, but it's amazing to kind of be able to help them and work alongside them.
Yeah. I feel the same way. So
Yeah.
I think when we start working at Neighbors Together, things become very clear.
Yeah.
So now I want to talk to you about your role as COVID-19 has hit New York City. We have had so many changes, and you are a part of our empowerment program, I should say, along with 2 other staff members that you've been working with, who I'm hoping to interview in the weeks to come. And after COVID-19, now that we've been in this for, I think we're entering our 11th week. 11th week of remote and emergency services. How has your role changed? What does it look like now?
My role has changed drastically. I mean, as you mentioned earlier, my original role was very much on site, face fronting, meeting with people in person several times a day. And now it's really shifted to all being over the phone or over email. At first, it was a lot of sort of just trying to help people understand like what types of services were still available and what types of services were not. So, I was not able to do taxes anymore, but I was still helping folks deal with issues that were just being exacerbated by COVID-19, such as I would say mainly issues in the shelters. As you probably talked about with Annie or different staff members before, the issues in the shelters have just increased tenfold since COVID-19 started. So I've been talking to a lot of different people about things that they're struggling with in the shelters, helping connect them with Coalition for the Homeless and different advocacy organizations to, just spread the word about what they're dealing with. In addition to that, I'm still helping folks get housing. It has sort of slowed down since everything started.
Right.
It's not so easy, but I'm still working alongside the City Commission on Human Rights to file reports of discrimination. I'm still helping people find listings to call brokers and landlords to try and just get out of their situations. But my workload has just become very different. I would say the issues I'm focusing on are still around the same, but the approach to dealing with them has changed a lot.
Right. What are you hearing from our members? I know you talked about a lot of issues in the shelters. What are some other things that are coming up in your conversations with members right now?
A lot of people are struggling with getting unemployment, figuring out how to deal with just the bureaucratic side of everything. So I was helping out a member a couple of weeks ago who was struggling because HRA, the Human Resources Administration, had just completely closed down once everything went remote, and she didn't know how to figure out her public benefits, and they'd been cut off. And that also meant that once her public assistance case was closed, her voucher wasn't paying her rent anymore. And then she was getting complaints from her landlord saying that they weren't getting her rent payments. And so it sort of became this like maze of just a nightmare of bureaucratic, I'm trying to think of the words, but it was just crazy. And so sort of just helping people figure out like, what is the root of the problem? How can I actually get in touch with people when everything is on remote? If the phone number is taking me to their office number, how am I supposed to get in touch with someone? And so trying to get them connected with, for example, I connected this one particular member to the New York Legal Assistance Group and their public benefits unit because they have a contact at HRA that they can actually directly speak to someone. So it's been a lot of like just trying to figure out where the gaps are. Also with stimulus checks, a lot of people didn't have to file taxes because they only receive public assistance. And so trying to figure out, well, if I didn't file my taxes, how can I get the stimulus check? And so I spent a lot of time poring over the internet and looking into different just ways of figuring out how to help our members get that payment because that's really important to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of your role, it sounds like, is you're trying to navigate a lot of these weird, everyone is affected by this right now, but a lot of the messages that were being told from, public service organizations might be different than what's actually happening. And it sounds like you're trying to navigate a lot of that to find out what's actually going on and how you can actually help people. Is that right?
Yeah, actually.
Yeah. So we have been posting at Neighbors Together the services that you're offering right now. Can you just quickly list some of those services that we've been posting so people who are watching this can know?
Yeah. So I believe what you've been posting is registering for SNAP for food stamps over the phone. Also, in addition to that, getting housing, figuring out things with people's vouchers, applying for the affordable housing or New York City Housing Connect. I'm sort of drawing a blank right now. What else have I?
No problem. Well, we'll link to the services that we're offering right now. And I know that's been really helpful for our members, because a lot of members are calling you just kind of asking all sorts of questions and not really knowing what to do.
Right.
So during this time, what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned? I know you've relocated yourself because you're now working remotely, and the majority of our staff outside of our cafe staff who's rotating right now. What are some of the biggest lessons you've learned about adapting during this time in your role?
I would say I've learned the lesson that communication is key, especially amongst our staff. Because we had such a tiny office, it was so easy to just run over to a coworker's office and ask them a question. And so it's been really important to remember that even though I can't do that, I can still shoot an email, call someone, text someone, just to make sure that we're covering all our bases. Because at least in my experience, so much of my role, I was getting so much assistance from my coworkers, just asking them questions, asking them for advice, and I still really rely on that, and that's been really helpful. Another thing is I've learned that, these issues that that our members were facing before COVID-19 have not gone away, and that it's important to just kind of keep at it, keep beating the pavement, and never just kind of give up. I mean, people still need this assistance. So finding just, a little bit more roundabout ways of helping folks with what they need. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Miriam. Where can people who are watching this, or members who might be watching this, how can they contact you?
So, I can say my phone number if that works, or...
Well, we can put it in the description, actually. Yeah. So via phone and email is usually best for you, right?
So my work number, you can also put my Google Voice number. I'm not sure if you have it, but if not, I will send that to you, and my email.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We'll put it in the description so people know where they can contact you if they need any help.
Yeah.
Thank you for everything you're doing right now. I know that this is such a huge shift for all of us, and I'm really glad that we can be transparent with all of our followers and our community on what you're doing and how you're advocating for our members and how you're continuing to do the work that you're doing. Is there anything else you want to mention before we wrap up?
No, I think I covered it all.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining me today, Miriam, and just giving some people an insight into what you're doing. And again, if you're watching, follow us on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, and we'll be posting everything related to this interview today, as you're watching May 28th, which is wild. Again, thank you for joining us at this week's episode of This Week at Neighbors Together, and we'll see you at the next one. Thanks, guys.